Oh, hello. Hi, it's Carla. I'm back. It's episode 2. Duh. Anyway, I just wanted to stop and do a little intro here and say thanks for the pod love and thanks for all the community love that I felt this last week. This is so much fun. I had so much fun doing this podcast, and I'm gonna try again and do episode 2. So yeah, just so exciting. Anyway, my husband is next door in the bedroom. He's got earbuds in, said he's watching something, but I don't know. I think he's listening in. And last week we watched my first episode together. And that is nerve-wracking when your husband watches with you. He's your worst critic or your best critic. I don't know, however you want to put it. Anyway, I'm kind of messy, but I'm always messy. I've written some notes. I've got lots of things to say. I've got some shout outs to do. I've got a favorite author, designer, and knitter to talk about. So I'll be back in a minute. Okay, here's the question. Should I wear the glasses or not? To see clearly or not? Anyway, welcome. I am so excited about all of this. This is so much fun. Anyway, I am Carla, and today's date is March 5th, and I am Knit-Nix on Ravelry, and I'm Carla Jean on Instagram. And this is episode 2, and my attempt at being a little more organized, because that's tough for me. Anyway, so I'm going to begin with a big wow and a thank you to several people who have friended me or started following me on Instagram, and for the really great comments and high fives on YouTube, my YouTube channel. People have subscribed, and I've got close to 200 views, which to me that's a lot. I mean, other podcasters get so many views, and I am just new to this, so I'm real thrilled about having my 200 that I've had so far. Let me see here. I'm looking at my notes. Okay, so most podcasters start with on Ravelry. They do a group, and that is a bit of a fear for me, because a group means that I will possibly, I guess to start a group you have to invite people to join, and I'm really afraid that if I start a group, that it's like being alone in a room or hosting a party and nobody comes. So I'm gonna not start a group yet. I will if there is some kind of desire and need to chit chat, which I'll happily do. I'm one to love to message and such, and maybe I'll host down the road some threads that maybe we'll do maybe a knit along. I'm not a huge knit along person. I love following knit-alongs, but I don't seem to kind of get into them myself. I kind of just do my own thing. But maybe if a knit-along was my own thing, doing things that I like to do, like mittens or socks or something, then maybe I would, well, if I hosted one, I would have to be part of it. Today, first up, I'm going to talk about what's on the sticks. And I have several things from last week that I've made some progress on, and one new thing that I've started. So I'm going to start because I'm kind of loving the new thing. Everybody likes something new. I'm going to talk about my new sock that I've started. It is a sock called, it's just a vanilla sock, and here it is. You can see that, and I'm kind of part of it done. It's a top-down sock, and I've just passed the heel flap, and the yarn that I'm using is an opal yarn, and I bought this. There's a little story behind this one too. I bought this yarn on Etsy, and one of the salespeople there, or one of the stores, had kind of almost like a clear out, and they had several balls of this yarn, and I bought several and different colorways and some solids. So I'm kind of I bought kind of a whole bunch of it, hoping to knit lots of socks. And I don't know if you can see behind me. Maybe you can't. Is it there? There's a basket back there, kind of on, nope, you can't see it. It's beside that shelf unit. Anyway, I have a basket of this stuff. I think in total, I bought probably 15, 5 and 5, 10, maybe 20. 20 balls, different sizes, 150 grams and 100 grams. It's a little thicker weight. It's a DK weight, I think. But it is really nice to work with. It is merino, and it's a superwash merino and nylon blend, and it's really, really pleasant to work with. But I haven't finished it, and I'm not sure how it fits. It's not quite as soft. It's a tiny little bit scratchy, but I'm liking it. And I'm normally using my 9-inch circs, but when I get to the heel part, I like to use DPNs. So I've got some bamboo DPNs on, and I'm just working the gusset right now, but when I get back to working the foot, I'm going to go back to my 9-inch circs. So that's what's new on the sticks, and I'm going to show you some progress that I've made on my other socks. I was talking, I'm in a knitting group on Saturday mornings that I've just recently joined. And I thought this was called a Zauberball. And I was talking to a lady beside me, and she's from Switzerland. And I showed it to her, and I said, I'm using a Zauberball. She looks at me, she goes, it's not a Zauberball, it's a Zauberball. So anyway, remember how I had kind of just this much last week? Well, I've made this much progress. And again, it's a Zauberball, and this is getting smaller, but I'm just absolutely loving how this is knitting up. And I think I might have the tag here, or maybe I don't. I'll have a look here. Yep, and I showed last week. It's a crazy Zauberball. And yeah, here is the tag. So that's what I'm knitting, and that's a lot of fun. So I've done the other sock. It's fully completed, but I'm just finishing up that. And let's see what else I've done here. I might say too, on this sock that I'm knitting, the previous one, I'm using the good old Deborah Norville coordinating heel, toe, and cuff. And now I made a little bit of progress on my other socks. Remember, I don't know if you remember last week how I turned my Babel socks into denim socks. I'm calling these my jean socks. So I've done that sock, and I'm just working on the second sock, and I've turned the heel, and I have made some progress. So yes, I'm working on that. I'll probably, hopefully by this week, I will get at least to the toe. So that's my third sock that I've been working on. I'm kind of on a sock kick, and last week I also talked about this lovely little cascade ball that I've had, and the progress on that is nada. Well, maybe I've done 2 rows, but it's beautiful. But this cascade one that I've been working on. So yeah, like I said last week, I kind of like to have several things on the needles. So yes, I've got several socks on the go, none of which are complete, but lots where I've made some progress. Like I said, I'm really excited about the first one, so kind of been focusing on those. So yeah, that's what's on the sticks. And what's off the sticks? Well, there's one project off the sticks, and of course I didn't knit it last week, and since I'm a new podcaster, I can talk about some projects that I've done in the past, and I'm really proud of these. These were in, if you've watched the beginning of my show, I had some projects that I've had on there, and I had these up, and these are some gorgeous, this is a great little pattern. This is a pattern on Rav, and it's a free pattern, and it is called the Japanese, what did I say here? It's called the Japanese Wave Mittens. And I'll put the information on these in the creds here on the bottom of the screen. But aren't these great? These are my very first color work project that I've done. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was, the wool was bought by a friend I talked about last week, my friend Carmen. And she, I asked her, is color work hard? And she said, oh, you could do it. So she went out and bought me two kinds of yarn. She bought me the green in here, and the top yarn, the orange, is kind of a yarn that kind of color changes. It goes from greens to oranges. She bought me those, and she gave me a pattern, and I tried the pattern and I didn't like it very much. So I asked her if she'd be offended if I used the yarn and found a different pattern. So I went on to Ravelry, and I fell in love with the Fiddlehead. It looked a little complicated, and it was lined and everything, and I was still new to color work, so I wanted to try something that had a lot of color work in it, but didn't have a lining, and it was just real basic. So I started with this. Now the pattern that they give you has a different cuff. I think it's got a regular cuff, and so I combined two free patterns. I combined the cuff to here, and this cuff is called the 3M Mittens. I just used the cuff from that, and it's another free pattern, and I'll put the credits on the screen here too as well. I started with the cuff, and then I worked my way into the regular part. And the coolest part about this was my first kind of color work project, and I sent a message to the pattern creator, told her that I'd made them, and I kind of tagged her in it, and didn't she use my mittens as, you know how you can display pictures? She put those mittens up there, and that was my first kind of claim to fame for having one of my projects put on Rav as one of the, she's the designer, she used my photo and my project as part of her pattern picture, so that was kind of cool, or her project picture. So yeah, cool, and I love them. And the cream colored yarn in here, which I didn't mention yet, is the Patons, what did I tell you, say here, it's the Patons Classic Worsted, and the color is a 202, and it's the cream or Aran color. So yeah, pretty easy. They are wool, but it's, you know, it's not 100% wool, it's a wool acrylic blend. Hi, and welcome back. Yeah, I decided to put the glasses on because then I can see, and then I can actually look at my notes and make this a complete podcast that's not hopefully all over the place. It's day 2. I took a break, but then I also went to bed because the lighting in here at nighttime, it's really yellow because it's overhead light and dark outside. This may not be any better because the light's coming in from the side, from the window, but at least it's more natural light. And I changed where my camera is, and I'm actually sitting on a stool I was standing before. So I don't know, I'm trying to figure this whole thing out, but I'm an amateur, and I'm working my way through. So I forgot to mention too, for those of you who viewed my first episode, thanks for coming back. And if you're new, I'm Carla, and I'm from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, in case I didn't put that out there or you didn't watch the first episode. And I'm a teacher and mom and sister and friend and yada, 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 you name it. I wanted to go on and start the next part of my podcast called The Fix, and which is kind of like anything retail that I've purchased, because it's like a fix. And again, if you didn't watch my first podcast, my name is Knit-Nix, and that's the name of the podcast. So everything is ending with an IX. All right. Well, my acquisition is not this week, but it's one that I got that I'm planning to use really soon. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because this girl who this acquisition is from is an indie dyer, and she lives in Boulder, Colorado. I think it's Boulder, I'm pretty sure. Not Denver, but Boulder. And she is a podcaster, and her podcast is called Hue Loco, and so is her yarn. And she is really, really lovely. She dyes great. Her name is Nicole, and she dyes great yarn. And I got two skeins of, I don't know if the camera's doing it. Yeah, it's pretty good. Of this gorgeous denim-y blue. And it's on her, she calls it, I think, well, I would pronounce it mauve, but I think I've heard her call it mauve base. It's on her M-A-I-V-E base, and the colorway is Duplo. And the reason that I'm bringing her up is because, number one, it's absolutely beautifully squishy, this yarn. And number two, I love her podcast. She's got such a gentle way about her, and she just is informative, and she does up all these wonderful little teaching videos. She's done videos on dyeing yarn, but my favorite one is about how her tutorial and pattern, free pattern. All you have to do is just sign up with her email. And she, she also has an Etsy shop, and she also has a website, hueloco.com. And she taught me how, I mean, I'm a bit of a sewer, I learned in school, but she taught me the basics on how to make a project bag. And here's one of mine. This is the one that's currently holding on. Oh, look, I even have my own little label. Can you see that? Anyway, this is a very big one. This is one that holds large objects. I think it would hold Stella, Shannon, you know, your Cozy Memories blanket. Don't you think Stella would love to live in here? Let's chat. Anyway, I love this pattern, and it shows you how to do the bottom and the corners on it and everything. So I love her, and she's definitely somebody you should watch. And recently she did a trunk show in a yarn shop. I think it's still in Colorado. I don't know if it's in Boulder, but she was there, and she showed off some of her yarns, and she had some test knitters do some knitting for her. Love this girl. She's sweet. She's got a little family, and she just tells about her weekends. And I just, you know, you just feel like you're kind of peeking into her life. So hi, Nicole. Anyway, so she also, I'm going to take these off now. Sorry, they'll go off and on. She also met up with, this leads to my next part of my podcast called Books and Flicks. And she had her picture taken, and she posted on Instagram with Susan B. Anderson, and I think I would call her, she's up there with like the Yarn Harlot, and yeah, like she is lovely. I love the work she does. Susan B. Anderson has I think she is she's an author for sure, because I'm holding one of her books, her latest. And she is a podcaster. She doesn't do them as frequently as I'd like. So Susan, if you're watching, do another podcast. I love you. She has a fabulous, fabulous blog, and it's Susan B. Anderson. I don't know, if you Googled Susan B. Anderson, her blog comes up. And how I found out about her is she did a post on her blog called How I Make My Socks. And when I started sock knitting a year ago, I looked up how to make socks, and her kind of her recipe and her basic vanilla sock pattern came up. And I use it, and as she does, she kind of steers from it and tries out different things, but it's a real basic sock recipe on how to make socks. But her latest book, and she's done several, she does a lot of little stuffed animals and wee knits, and she's lovely. And I'm going to do my very best. Susan B. Anderson, when she starts her podcast, she goes, "Hello, knitters." I just love her. And she has glasses, and she's, you know, she's not real young, but she's not old, but I can relate to her because, and it's not that I can't relate to the young ones, I can, but I really enjoy listening to her because she's got kids about my kids' age, and she's from Madison, Wisconsin. And she is just lovely. She's just got a sweet demeanor, and she takes you on trips. I've been out to her adventures in canoes, and she's been to, you know, she takes you on her travels, and she does little snippets here and there. which I might do too on a future podcast. But anyway, her latest book is awesome. And this copy comes from our local library. And I loved it so much that I ordered it for my knitting club. I have a knitting club at school. And this book is just filled with all kinds of great patterns. And the patterns go from most simple to more difficult, and it's very readable for kids. And she does mention in here how age 10 is the perfect age for a child to start knitting. I know some are, you know, start a lot younger than that. I've seen 3 and 4-year-olds catching on, but I agree with that because my 10-year-olds are, number one, really interested in it. They have the dexterity, the you know, the skills, the fine motor skills to work yarn and needles. And she also talks about starting them on circular needles, which I never thought of doing. I've just asked for donations, and I've got all kinds of yarn and needles, and I just sit them down and we get started, and I have a little knitting group. But she talks about using little circulars because when you think about it, knitting in the round is a really great idea for kids starting out. They don't have to worry about, you know, dropping the end stitch or turning around. You know, it's just a continuous stitch. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to incorporate her ideas. And I did buy this for my school library, and it'll be available, Susan, if you're watching, please watch. It'll be available to for the kids in the library to sign out. And I have, once a week we meet for Knit Club, and I have probably 20 or 30 kids at a time, and we have a parent volunteer and another teacher helping out, and we just sit around at lunch hour and knit. And I'm going to use this book, and I'm going to recommend it to my students. So if you haven't seen it yet, the book is called Susan B. Anderson's Kids Knitting Workshop, and it's beautiful. It's got all kinds of lovely pictures and her projects, like and just the illustrations. Here's like, what little girl wouldn't love to knit some of these projects? And at the very here, love this. Oh my gosh. Look at these little headbands. Like, how cute are they? Oh my goodness. Anyway, Susan, good job. And I'm reading it. I'm about halfway through. I'm going to read it from cover to cover, and I'm definitely going to recommend it to my students, and I recommend it to the community that you should get this book, because if you are trying to teach your children or grandchildren or your students to knit, this is kind of like one of those kind of Bibles. So get this book. So there's that, and I'm going to put my glasses back on. Hello. And now I'm going to move on to my people picks, which are my shout outs. This is my second episode, and in my after watching my first, a girl who lives in Vancouver, her name is Shannon Fisher. She's Shannon Mariah on Instagram and Shannon Fisher on Ravelry. She gave me a shout out in her most recent podcast, and she is awesome because the way she starts out in the beginning of her podcast. Here, I can take these off. She does a little dance, and she gives herself a chipmunk voice, and she sings the polka dot door. I mean, you start giggling before the episode begins. And then she talks about some real issues in her life, and I love that. She's a real person. She's multifaceted. She's funny, and she's just really a great watch. And her podcasts, you know, anywhere from 45 to an hour, not too long. And I just entertained from the very beginning right to the very end. And she does Shannon from the future, and she takes you on little walks. And she's just a Canadian and a fellow knitter, and she's going to Knit City in Vancouver, October 1st and 2nd. And I'm hoping Susan B. Anderson might go there, because I know they're offering workshops and they're having designers there. So if you're watching, Susan, get to Knit City in Vancouver, October 1st and 2nd. And yes, Shannon, I'm going to. So I will see you and all the other Canadian podcasters there. Larch, the Lone Larch is going, I'm told. And I've heard that Julie, who's my other shout out, Julie, the Diary of a Yarn Snob, she lives in Reno, Nevada, and she, right after my first podcast, she posted a picture on Instagram with a picture of me on her little device, a picture of my podcast. She was watching it and sewing. So thank you, Julie from Diary of a Yarn Snob. Thanks for the shout out. And I love watching you too, because you're a little bit scattered and a little bit silly, just like I am. So thank you for the love. And I've also found out there is some other podcasters in Calgary. There's one called Pin Feathers and Pearls, I think, and I haven't watched her yet, but I plan to. I've kind of just seen that she's there, and I think there's a new one. She's a young mom, and she is expecting twins, and if I'm not incorrect, her name is Yarn Studio, and she started following and subscribing. And even from last night when I watched Shannon's new podcast, Socksetra podcast, from then I had under 200 views, and now I have like in the 200s of views. So I'm gaining a little traction. So thanks for all the community love. And I just want to do a shout out to those people who've mentioned me. And if you do watch my podcast and you have your own podcast and you do a shout out for me, let me know. Instagram me, follow me on Instagram, subscribe to me, and follow me on YouTube, or friend me. Come and friend me. I'm Knit-Nix, Knit-Nix on Ravelry. I would love it if you added me as a friend, and encourage me to start a group, because then we can really get to know each other. So I haven't done it yet, but maybe I will. But I guess it's something that takes a little courage in case, nobody joins or nobody shows up. So that's that. Okay, I'm going to put my glasses back on, so I'm making sure that I'm not missing anything. Yeah, the mix I put here. Let's see here. Yes, I mentioned that I do a little bit of art, and if you can see right there, that is the start of an acrylic painting that I started, oh gosh, over a year ago. And I've kind of gotten away from it. Not sure why. Probably because I started that. It's Marilyn Monroe, and I love her. She's classic bad girl. And her story is so tragic, but she was a beautiful, she wasn't a skinny lady. She was a real average girl. She was led such a tragic life. But I love just her poses, and this one in particular, this dress, I guess, I read about it in a book. She was given this dress to put on, but it didn't fit her. It was like, I think she was like a size 10 or 12 lady, sizing for dresses. And I think this dress was like a size 6, and she couldn't get the zipper up. So she had it on, but it was kind of falling off of her. But I just absolutely love it. I'm going to maybe grab it and bring it just a tad closer. It's an underpainting, and I haven't finished it. The colors aren't there yet, but this is called the underpainting, and I'm going to add some textures, and I'm going to add some parts of her chair here. I'll actually give it some texture in here. And I just think, isn't she like, look at that cleavage. Wow, I wish. Anyway, I should finish this, and I'm going to work on it, but I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and her face is troubling me, and I don't know. But anyway, this is an acrylic that I started about maybe 2 years ago, that I do plan on getting back to, maybe when I retire, which isn't yet. I'm still teaching away and loving it. So that's that. Anyway, I think that is it. So that was my mix, the mix. And I think that is, oh, also Eric. Eric on, he is Sticks Plus Twine, I think. I loved your podcast. I watched your first and then your most recent, and you're lovely, and I really love that you're a guy who knits. And in my little knitting group, believe it or not, I have a handful of boys, and they are really good, and they are diligently working away and encouraged. And I even showed them online some designers and some fellow knitters that are like, who does some of those shawls? I can't remember his name. Anyway, you'll know who I mean. The fellow who does the beautiful shawl patterns, and his name's coming to me, and then it just ran away. Anyway, I just showed them some designers and some fellow knitters, and I'm also going to show them that you podcast, that there are knitting podcasters out there. So shout out to you, Eric. Good job, and keep doing what you're doing. I watched Danny at Little Bobbins, love that, love her. Thanks. Just shout out to you, the Bakery Bears, you know, Bryony Bear. Yeah, I just love the knitting community, and I'm just starting to get really into it. And so, yeah, thank you for doing what you're doing and recognizing me and my poor talent, but and encouraging me to keep going. So thanks, and farewell from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and we'll see you next time. Bye now.